So it's blistering hot in LA, and this is going to be my last day with the Medieval. So what I'm doing is I have this, and I have this, the MPC One Plus. They're both going to feed into the Tascam Model 12 here. And we're going to have a little bit of fun. So on its way out, I'm going to shoot out the Teenage Engineering Medieval against the MPC One Plus. An unfair comparison, you might say, as brand new the MPC One Plus goes for $699 and brand new the Medieval goes for $299. However, you can find the MPC One Plus's predecessor, the MPC One, for around $425 used, and I think that is a pretty fair comparison, as a lot of people get their gear used. I get a lot of my gear used. Actually, none of this gear I got used, but when it comes to guitar gear, amplifiers, pedals, stuff like that, I usually go used first. It just makes the most sense, since this is the type of gear that lasts more or less forever. Yeah, I usually just buy it used. Samplers and things like that don't last forever, but they do last for a really long time compared to some of the disposable crap that we use. But I also think that it's a good comparison because I think both of these products attract people who are just getting started making music. And this being as cute as it is and seeming as toyish, which I believe is by design from Teenage Engineering, might be misleading to some consumers. And in fact, I've had people on this channel talk about how they got one of these and they're just completely lost as far as how to use it. And the MPC One, on the other hand, I have a few skateboarding students that are also learning how to make beats. And I'm talking kids that are between 8 and 11 years old, and they make beats on the MPC One absolutely fine. I myself, the MPC One Plus is the first sampler I ever owned, and I was up and running making beats and songs on it within a half an hour. Whereas the Medieval, first day I had the instruction manual. I had my phone open so I could have another page of the instruction manual. At any given time, the first few days I used it, I had to have two separate parts of the instruction manual open. The first 2 or 3 days that I had it, I had to sit with it the first day about 7 hours straight. Like, I blew out the first set of batteries I put in the Medieval that first day because it's just that complicated to get the hang of. And the lack of a real detailed screen means that you got to use a bunch of button combinations, whereas with the MPC One Plus there are button combinations, but you don't have to use them since it has a touch screen and it has a more robust interface. So I'm gonna kind of speed run through making something on both of them, and then I'll make more comparisons at the end, and hopefully this will help people that are in the market for a sampler, and they might have been kind of pulled in by the aesthetics of this. They might also be considering this because contrary to what you may think, some of you more experienced people who have a feel for the market, I've also received comments from a lot of people who are choosing between either the Medieval or the KO2 and the MPC One, or one of the MPCs. So it is a fair comparison when you factor all that in. Enough talking, let's get into making some music. Okay, Medieval is just simply going into the Tascam Model 12 over here. I'm going into channel 2, and that's the extent of the setup so far. Okay, I'm gonna go with Lindrum samples. Here they are. Only going with these is because these are what I know the most. So I've got the tempo at 86 BPM, and I've got the length at 2 bars. And let's go ahead and do it. Okay, I have a bass pulled up, and we're gonna do it. Okay, I got this guitar chord patch. And we're gonna do it. I'm gonna make sure that it's 2 measures this time, and we should be good. Okay, I got this. And I've already made sure that it's 2 measures, so let's just do it. Okay, I gotta do a little bit of volume, a little bit of EQ, so here we go. I'm gonna start with D, and I'm just gonna go to the Manus, and I'm gonna make sure that it's all the way up. Okay, cool. It is at the right volume, and now I'm gonna go ahead and add some reverb to some of these tracks. So I start with D. Let's go poke. Okay, so I've got the effects at the level that I want. Now let's go see if I have trouble changing these back. Level. All right, we'll do a little bit of jam, and then we'll get on out and onto the MPC One Plus and try to create something. I'm not going to try to create exactly the same thing, but something similar. Here we go. Okay, so I got the MPC One Plus now, and I've got Lindrum samples. Had to do a little bit of work on the volume, which is something easy to do. You just double click this and then you've got your pad mix. So I was able to just quickly go in and change the volume of all of those drum samples. I'm at 86 BPM and I got 2 bars, so let's just go ahead and do it. Okay, I got a bass line pulled up. It's not the same. It's from the bassline plugin here because I didn't feel like going through samples and trying to match the sample, but I like this sound a little better. So let's do it. so used to the way that you trigger recording on the Medieval that I was hitting play start instead of stop on the MPC One Plus. Okay, got the Jura patch. And we're gonna put down a melodic track. So let me just name it Jura. And the Jura is like a Juno patch. Okay, got some Mellotron strings, and I'm gonna just lay it down. So. Alright, I'm here and I'm on that Mellotron track. So what I'm going to do is hit this I, and now I'm going to solo that track. So unlike the Medieval on the MPC One Plus, we can add effects up to 4 inserts per channel, and there's a ton of effects in here. And so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So that Mellotron, I think it could use like a delay. And so that's the first thing I'm going to do. So I'm not going to get into like fully sculpting the sound like I normally do in these videos for you guys that watch. So I'm just going to hit a tape delay, a sync tape delay. Now some reverb. So I think that's good for the Mellotron. And then I'm also going to pan the Mellotron. So take it off solo. Okay, now we got one more melodic track. We got the Jura track. I'm going to solo that. this bass line, and I'm just gonna mess with this thing. So first thing that I'm gonna do is add a kill EQ on it since it's a bass. Last thing to do, go over to these drums, and I'm just gonna squash the heck out of these drums. So let's solo them real quick. And now I'm just gonna go over to the main bus, and I'm gonna put a vintage effect on that. So that's a long video. It's actually going to be much longer than I had intended for it to be. I actually had to take a break in between recording in the Medieval and in the MPC One just because it's so hot in here right now. This is like our fourth 100+ day of the week. I'm dying. I think everybody's dying. I know people out in Arizona are getting worse. I heard they had 100+ degree days in a row. That's insane. But Yeah, that was an interesting thing. So one thing that I'll say is the medieval definitely has its charm. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run through each of those back to back a couple times, and then we'll talk more. So here's the MPC One Plus version. And now here is the Teenage Engineering Medieval version. So what I will say is that for that type of composition, I do like what I was able to do with the medieval as far as the character of it a little bit more. But as far as the actual sound, I like what I was able to do with the MPC One more. And given a little bit of time, I probably make exactly the same thing. But I use the built-in plugins of the Akai other than the Lindrum samples. And on the medieval, I used purely samples, and it sounds like samples. I'm sweating like crazy because it's so hot. But let's talk about the pros and cons of each. So when it comes to performing, you don't get much from the MPC One Plus in the way of performance options. Now, I have done little performances where I'll use the pads to like mute certain instruments and stuff like that. And there is like an XY pad that you can use with effects, but I've never used it. To be honest, the only reason that I use the punch effects on the Teenage Engineering Medieval is just because I'm out of other options. There aren't other options that I can use. You know, I can put one effect on this thing and that's about it. And then, then I'm out of options. So it forces you to kind of engage with those punch effects. Whereas with the MPC One Plus, I've never wanted to do anything like that because I can create song structure with it so easily that I don't really need to mess with those DJ effects like that. Are the DJ effects fun? Yes. The only time that I've done that is running out of the MPC One Plus into Koala Sampler or Koala Effects. And then I use the effects. I think the implementation of those effects is better on Koala anyway, but they are fun with the Teenage Engineering Medieval. Now, where the MPC One Plus soars is, you know, I was playing in the natural minor scale, and it's so easy to switch between those scales on the MPC One Plus. All you have to do is hit pad perform and then just select your scale. Whereas on the medieval, for me to actually get into that scale, there's nothing about this in the instruction manual, nothing that I saw. I stumbled across the ability to do it on a YouTuber who'd been using the KO2 for a long time and who dug in and found the numeric codes. So I think the scale that I was using is like 312 is the code, and you have to like get into that part of the menu, which I don't even remember how to do. And that's where the medieval fails me. Not only does it have this weird scheme as far as how everything is named, which I kind of started to get over because you just start to remember, instead of thinking like I'm gonna hold Altero and Demis, which I never do because that's for like the example tracks or the demos or whatever, or instead of hitting Altero and Correctus, you just remember I'm holding this button and this button at the same time. And so you start to get used to that. But the menu diving is so necessary in this thing, and there's no way for you to really know what menu you're in, because you're usually getting like 3 characters to indicate the name of the menu. And then another thing, like, I didn't pitch the samples of the Lindrum samples at all on the MPC One Plus because I thought they sounded fine, but I pitched them on this, and the toms that I had on 4, 5, and 6. I'll turn it on so you can hear them. There we go. So I had them on 4, 5, and 6. 4, 5, and 6. And I pitched those to get them to sound like that. And just figuring out which pitch to have each pad in relative to another. I had to do it by ear, which it's fine to do it by ear, but it takes so much longer when you don't have a visual representation, whereas everything in the MPC One Plus has a visual representation. As long as you figure out what the name of the place you need to go to is, as long as you memorize that, you can navigate to it and you can do what you want. Whereas on the Medieval, it's all going to be based on muscle memory. And when you don't have that muscle memory down, you're going to be looking at a manual. And I've had this thing for 2.5, 3 weeks now, and I'm still looking at the manual constantly, even though I've made quite a bit of music on it. You've seen on this channel, and I've made even more music that I just didn't put up here because, like I said, some days I was spending 6-7 hours with this thing. But I found someone who's bought it. I'm gonna pack it up and ship it out. Would I recommend it? I recommend it to somebody who already knows how to make music, to be honest. Like, if you've already used samplers, if you've had an SP-303 or an SP-404, SP-404 Mark II, SP-404 SX, one of those. If you used old MPCs, obviously. But people like that don't need my recommendations. Would I recommend it for the people that are going on to YouTube and searching for recommendations of things to buy? I probably wouldn't. Like, I don't like the Digitact either. I have one in my living room right now, and I've only used it a couple of times because, like, I just don't like that thing. And I think if I were like making techno or something and I just wanted to make drums on it and use it purely as a drum machine, sure. But since I have an MPC and I usually play instruments, there's absolutely no point for me to use it. I don't like the workflow. As expensive as that device is, comparing it to the MPC, I think it's just, like, honestly kind of worthless to me. I know some of you electronic music people probably find uses for it, or you guys that are just Electron fans. But over that, I'd recommend something like the Model samples or whatever the drum version of that is to someone who's a beginner, because you can find them really cheap online. And I think that the Model products are a little easier to use for just about everyone compared to the Medieval. Also, like the Sample Track, I think that thing I'd recommend over the Medieval also. Medieval and the KO2. I would recommend checking out the KO2 over the Medieval, even though I do like that the Medieval has multi-sampling. I don't really care about the arpeggiator because it's not something that I use the arpeggiator on. I think I used it once and then the novelty wore off. But yeah, the things that I don't like about it are the way everything is named, obviously that Medieval scheme. The biggest gripe that I have is this character right here, how that's taking the place of visual feedback that you have on the KO2. I just think that is stupid. There's no other way to describe that choice. It's stupid. Like, they got rid of some of the feedback you have when you're using the instrument so that they could put a like cheeky Medieval character on the device. That's just dumb, bad design. Where do I think it shines over the MPC One Plus? I think the only way is the portability, the fact that you can use it with batteries. The battery life is pretty good. But, I have a battery pack that I use with the MPC One Plus as well, and I've never taken either of these devices out to like a coffee shop and made music. I just haven't. Maybe that's something that you'll do, and so maybe for some of you that's more beneficial. But yeah, the batteries, it has a built-in speaker. The speaker's not great, but it's there. You know, like you're not really gonna get good idea of how everything sounds really through that speaker. So you're gonna need headphones or an actual external speaker, but it has one and you can play with it. I think like if you're looking for a toy, then that's where the Medieval is gonna shine. And if you're looking to get into producing, like if you want to make music and you want to release music and you want to play music possibly with other people and you want to try to have a career in music, get an MPC. I mean, it's industry standard. Like, you know, some of the biggest pop musicians and hip hop musicians and all kinds of musicians today and for the past 35 years or so, 35 years, I think it is, have used MPCs. So if you want to make music, you should get an MPC. Funny thing is, I've met Gary Clark Jr. twice. And the first time that I met him, we were both buying MPCs at Guitar Center. And the second time was outside of a bar. The bar time was funny, but yeah. And then I heard the next album that he made, and I was like, yeah, he totally used the MPC X that I saw him buying that day to produce that album. And he's a rock musician. I guess you would call me a rock musician too. And I use the MPC. I do make some beats and stuff just for fun sometimes, or just for something in the background of my skate videos. But largely I make songs that have 2, 3, or 4 parts, and I make all of my music for the most part on the MPC One, like 99% of the music that I make. I love that it's got built-in effects. I love that you can change the tempo from one part to the next part easily. I think you can do that on the Medieval. Like you can chain the patterns somehow. I think I might even be wrong about that. I'm not sure, because I was like so busy just trying to get the hang of the basic features that I couldn't really dig deeper into it. And that's the other thing. I think in order to get a real feel of the Medieval, if you don't have any experience with samplers, and even if you do have experience with samplers, like I think if I had another 2 months with that thing, I could learn it in and out. I think a person who's fresh to samplers and like fresh to making music, it's going to take you a year with that thing to really, really, really learn it. And is it really worth it, to be honest? If you're serious about music and you're going to learn, you might as well pick up an MPC or a Machina, or, you know, there's any number of things. Even like, what are the Roland devices? Like the big Roland sampler that comes with like all the 808s and 909s and 707s and all those. Pick up one of those. I think you'd be better off. Or even if you like the Electron workflow, there's some Electron machines that you'd be better off with. Or Beatmaker 3 if you already have an iPad. Or GarageBand. Like GarageBand is amazing. That's the first DAW that I got used to. I moved on to Logic. Like once you learn what a mix bus is, or once you learn what, you know, a send is, then you're gonna outgrow GarageBand. But I still use it to sketch sometimes. I'll be up hanging out with people and I'll leave the room and go to the bathroom and like hammer something in with GarageBand on my phone, and then I'll bring it home and export it into Logic later and build it out. Even that would be much better to invest in. If you're just looking for a musical toy and you like the way it looks, you like the aesthetic, if you're a collector, then I recommend the Medieval. I still recommend the KO2 over it. It's just better. It's just the way it's implemented. But if you want multi-sampling and an arpeggiator, like I don't think Teenage Engineering is going to do anything to these with firmware updates. As far as I can tell, they haven't done much of anything with that, which is criminal, because at $300, like, relatively it is cheap, but like, what can you get for $300? You can get a lot, you know. This is about $300, and this is like one of my favorite guitar pedals ever that like I don't ever want to part with. And it's got so much functionality built into it. It just works. There's a lot that you can buy for $300 that people have put a lot of R&D into, and that works really well. You can get 3 of these microphones, and this mic is awesome. You can get a Fender Squier Classic Vibes guitar, and they're great, you know. So This thing that has a lot of problems, that is aesthetically cute, and that wasn't well designed, you can get for $300, but I wouldn't recommend it. I'm gonna stick with my MPC One Plus. Thank you guys for watching. This is a long video. Anybody who actually watched all the way, thank you so much. Check out my music in the description. Peace.